What's up, football fans? We are here ready to give our Week 4 power rankings. Fellas, there's been a little bit of movement since last week, especially with some upsets that happened over the past weekend. And we're going to go and start with number 8. And I don't think there's any shock here, Kenny, that the New York Guardians are going to fill this slot, a team that has just totally fallen apart. And perhaps, I hate to say this, especially this early in the season, but it seems like they're teetering on that line of just a collapse as a team. Like this week is a huge game to determine which direction this season's going to go for the Guardians.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You don't expect there to be a must-win game this early in the season, but I feel like for the Guardians, this weekend is a must-win situation. They've had 2 weeks in a row where the offense was completely in shambles. We've already documented the issues with McGloin's body language and him throwing his team under the bus. It's just very, very dysfunctional right now, and they need to win. I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, how can they be the last team if if Tampa hasn't won a game? But this isn't a standings ranking. This is a power ranking, and personally, I believe that New York right now is playing the worst football in the league.
It's pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, just 2 weeks in a row, just getting blown out, just undisciplined. You have, McGloin's tantrum at DC. Silberman, the center, had to be taken out because he just couldn't keep it together. That's the part that concerns me, not just the poor play on the field, but the lack of composure and the lack of discipline. And it's interesting because their Week 4 matchup is against the LA Wildcats, a team that was in a very, very similar situation going into last week, but two teams that are trending in a different direction. So the Guardians come in at number 8. Number 7, I think, the Tampa Bay Vipers, they were number 8 on our rankings last week. Obviously, it's just a slight move up. They did lose, but there was a lot to be optimistic about, and I think they showed that talent, Glessner, that we as a show have seen, going into the preseason. It's just that quarterback play, and you saw a little more consistent quarterback play last weekend.
Yeah, the offense was able to move the ball up and down the field. They were able to score, get in the end zone, and they got in the end zone early as well. And it all came from different guys. So there was a lot to be encouraged about as Tampa Bay Vipers fan for sure. It'll be, again, interesting to see what they do at quarterback. The word on the street is Murray that'll be healthy. Cornelius played a lot in the second half. In fact, I don't think Quentin Flowers got one snap at quarterback. So, Mark Trestman's got a decision on his hands at, an injured Aaron Murray. Does he stick with Cornelius? Does Flowers kind of get the start there? Regardless, I think there was a lot to be encouraged about, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I thought the defense, defense performed admirably. It was against Houston, one of the better teams and certainly the best offense in the league. So, but it was a great game and they fought to the end. So I think 7's kind of the perfect spot for them.
Yeah, so they're a team that's trending up. I mean, it was pretty bad those first couple of weeks, and just swapping quarterbacks in and out. And if you had looked at their schedule before this past week, you're like, DC's coming to town. But maybe that's not such a bad thing right now after their performance last weekend. So who knows? Maybe the Vipers can put it together. They have the weapons on offense. They just need more consistency, especially in the red zone. And we kind of were getting a little more of that last weekend versus Houston. So a lot of people were expecting a blowout. That's not what we got at all. We got a team that fought, which is also a good sign that team is not giving up after the slow start. Let's go to number 6. It's a team that was trending up after a slow start, but they did lose at home last week. The Seattle Dragons. Gless, we've identified the problem since the get-go, and it's just the offense.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's as much as Silvers and the lack of weapons, a combination of both. I mean, what do you think it is?
Yeah, I personally think that it's the lack of weapons. One of the things that really stood out to me, especially in the second half, because they played really well in the first half. Offensively, they went in the half with the lead 12-6. But the second half was so anemic on offense that they were just three and out. And any pass play, it just seemed like there were these short to intermediate routes. There was nothing extending the field. Brandon Silver's completing, balls that are 5 and 6 yards, and guys aren't making plays after the catch. It just looks like their passing game is extremely limited. And I'm not sure that's Brandon Silver's. To me, it looked like just what was being called on offense. It wasn't a lot of stuff downfield. The running game didn't get going at all. So I feel like as an offense, they're actually trending down. The one thing that really had going for them was, hey, the running game. We're going to get the running game going and try to be able to bring extra guys into the box to give a lot of one-on-one coverage. And frankly, that's just not happening at this point. And it's really difficult, for the defense to constantly be on the field when you're 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. So we have him at 6 this week just because the offense has to improve. And it certainly has to improve in the passing game because right now they don't have a lot of weapons to throw to. The weapons they do have aren't necessarily game breakers. The running game seems to be taking a step backwards. So, I think 6 is the perfect spot for them.
And the biggest issue is, I think, that not a lot of people talk about is not only is it an anemic offense with kind of a lack of weapons, but they also lost Mike Riley, who was their play caller. And so Jim Zorn's kind of, he's trying to keep that same continuity. And they even said on the broadcast, he's having to learn a lot of these concepts that Mike Riley had already installed before he had to take a leave of absence. So it's all around. It's just a really, really bad time for the Seattle offense right now.
Yeah. When you look at the number one receivers around the league, Keenan Reynolds, while we like him as a player, that I think that right there shows you just kind of where they are in terms of players that can break it. And I know Reynolds had that one big play down the field. He has that capability, but just as a consistent, he got benched the first week of the season because he was, non-existent in the passing game. So I just don't know if Keenan Reynolds is your number one receiver, if that's the answer in the passing game. So they're going to have to figure out some stuff. And then a lot of this is on Silvers too. He's just not playing consistent enough. And I've talked about this. He drives me crazy. He shows that he has the arm talent. He makes one miraculous throw followed by 2 head-scratching throws. So you got to clean that up if you want to move up these rankings. And I think they can do it, but they got to clean up stuff on offense. But a team that is trending, holy crap. Did anyone see this coming? I know, Gless, you talked about this when we were doing our game preview last week, that you thought the DC-LA game was going to be close, and you were wrong. But I don't think in the way that anybody thought you were going to be wrong. Holy crap, LA came out and played.
Yeah, LA was so impressive. Definitely the most impressive team this past weekend. Obviously offensively, they were outstanding. They were able to be extremely efficient in the red zone. And we've talked about in the show a lot of times, it's not only about getting in the red zone, but it's about scoring touchdowns when you're in the red zone. And they did that. But the biggest surprise of the weekend was how good they were on defense. 5 turnovers overall, 4 interceptions off of Cardell Jones. The defense was everywhere. They were fast, but they were physical. And they were physical from the start, and they really set the tone. But this was the Los Angeles Wildcat team we thought we were getting week 1. This is why they were number 1 in our power rankings. And if they play like this the rest of the season, watch out, because that team was extremely impressive on Sunday night.
If LA plays like this the rest of the year, the West is going to be amazing to watch with Houston, Dallas, and LA all competing for the 2 playoff spots. And and Josh Johnson looked super solid again. They just beat DC down in all 3 phases of the game: special teams, defense, and offense. And it shouldn't be a surprise that Josh Johnson's playing so well. We've heard from players that he is the best quarterback in this league, in their opinion. So for him to finally shake off the rust, shake off some of the injury woes he had, and he finally gets a full week of practice in, and look what he does. He absolutely just plays a super efficient game and looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So yeah, LA arrow is definitely pointed up.
His ball placement, especially on the deep pass, was on point. And you saw towards the end of the Renegades game, him and Landry Jones in that game were starting to kind of get the feel of the game back, get the rust off, if you will. And he carried that over to this game. He looked sharp. That just shows the difference that a quarterback makes in the XFL. So LA has a lot to be encouraged about heading into their matchup this weekend. So let's go ahead. So how we do this ranking is we all provide our own personal rankings. Then we add it up, and it's a composite ranking from all of our rankings. So Gless, I believe you and I had DC at number 3. Kenny had them at 5. And it just so happened that it was a tie for 3rd place between Dallas and DC. And I figure, since we're talking about the LA game, let's go ahead and talk about DC. What the hell happened? I was completely baffled all game. I know, Kenny, your feelings on Cardell Jones, but he just looked so uncomfortable back there, and he was just so off of his game. Receivers were nowhere near where he was throwing the ball. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. And it wasn't just him. Special teams, like areas where they dominated the first 2 weeks, they were being dominated. Special teams, defensively, like just lapses on defense. Obviously, that blocked punt on special teams. Like I couldn't believe what I was watching. Such a difference between weeks 1 through 2 defenders and then weeks 3 defenders.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we just said about LA was what we said about DC the first 2 weeks of the year. And I just couldn't put LA behind DC after they just absolutely beat them down the way they did. Like I said, they beat them on all 3 phases, special teams, defense, and offense. They were in Cardell's face the entire game. They got after him. They made him throw on the run, and he made a couple mistakes. And you heard Pep say a couple times, throw it away, and then he threw a pick. So it was really head-scratching. I don't think that's going to be a performance we see from DC very often. I think they're better than that. I think they got down so quick and so fast that it just absolutely
like shell-shocked them.
Yeah. And they were just stunned. It was like a boxer gets hit with a phantom punch early in the fight. He was just stunned the rest of the game. And so I the only thing was DC's performances the first 2 weeks a little bit of a mirage because they beat what we have, the 8th ranked team and the 6th ranked team in our composite rankings. So I don't know. Which DC team is it? I guess we're going to find out this week against Tampa.
Yeah, it just shows you that, football is ultimately a team sport and all 3 phases of the game have to work together. So, for example, the defense was given a lot of short fields, right? A lot of Cardell Jones interceptions, 4 of them, right? So the defense is working on short ground. They seem to always be on the field, just like we saw the week before with New York, and that defense is always on the field. You can only ask so much, right? At times you got to pick your boys up, you got to pick your guys up. But the defense, the defender's defense didn't play great by any means, but certainly the offense didn't help them out with by giving them short fields. Yeah,
it's crazy because everybody was talking about the revenge game for Rashad Ross and Anthony Johnson, and it's Trey McBride who had revenge, scoring 2 touchdowns after a slow start to his season. He didn't even play in the first couple games, and he comes out and just balls out versus his old DC Defenders team with 2 touchdowns. So, it's very head-scratching, and I'm not really sure what to make of it, honestly. I think I just need more. I need to see more because I thought I knew what the Defenders were, and this performance makes me step back and be like, maybe I need to wait and see a little bit on this team. I think the talent's obviously there, but we'll see if they put it together, and they're on the road again, so it'll be another test versus a Tampa team that played really well last week. So let's move to Dallas, a team that's won 2 in a row. Landry Jones is back. He's still looking pretty shaky, though, in my opinion. And extremely unathletic. He is nowhere near football shape. I don't know if his knees still bother him or what. Yeah. But this Dallas team, they make plays when it matters. Clearly, they're a second-half team, and I think the key, guys, and I'll start with you, Gless, is the running game. Getting Cameron Artis-Payne going, I think, is key for this offense, and that you see that in the second half. Once he gets rolling, the whole offense opens up.
Yeah, you saw that this week against Seattle, and you saw that the previous week against LA. Like, once they're able to get the run game going and start to get their running backs getting that 5-6 yard carries, it really opens up the whole offense. And to your point, that Riley, they are a second half team. This is the second week in a row they've gone into half down, and then they've come back the second half and have really dominated the game in both second halves. So, I said this last week. I'll say it again. The reason they're not higher on my list, they're actually 4 on my list instead of 3. I actually had DC at 3 still. I still like to see a little bit more from the defense. I know they played Seattle. I know they held them to 12 points, but they got down early and they gave up some big plays early. So I like to see the Renegades put a full 4 quarters together before I feel like I can move them up. So they're a talented team. We all knew they were extremely talented coming in, both on offense, both on defense. They've made some moves this week, which I think will ultimately boost the defense. But I'd like to see Dallas put 4 quarters of good football together because they have yet to do that.
Yeah, and if they do put all 4 quarters together and we finally see what they look like, that could be absolutely devastating for the rest of the teams in the West. Yeah. I think Landry's still working back from a knee injury. He doesn't look like he's quite in shape. He looks like a guy who was out 4 to 6 weeks with a knee injury. So I think there's hope though, as this, you can tell as he gets loose, as he kind of shakes off that early game rust, he really gets going. So I think that's very encouraging for Dallas. I think he's only going to get better throughout the year, and that running game is by far the best running game in the league. And and you can tell in the second half when they've grinded down the other team's defense, because Cameron Artis-Payne just ate in the second half last week. It was very impressive.
He's the best running back in the league right now.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, Landry Jones, like you said, Kenny, 4 to 6 weeks, but he also hasn't played meaningful football in a couple of years.
2017, yep.
So it's going to take him a little while to get really back into game shape.
Yep.
And I think he's going to get there. I mean, you see the talent. He's one of the most, if not the most, talented in terms of throwing the football quarterback in the league. So another team that's trending more skyrocketing. And we said this. It's so funny in our week 1 power rankings. We had them lower on our list, but we said this team, if their quarterback, who's a rookie, can perform and get the ball to his skill position players, this is a team that can shoot up the list, and that's right where the Battlehawks are. Look at that. It only took them a few weeks to get there.
Right.
Number 2 on our list, and man, they are impressing me more and more every single week.
Yeah, Jordan Ta'amu, I mean, what an absolute job he's done the first 3 weeks of the season. I mean, is he a rookie? He's not playing like one. He's had, listen to his completion percentages the first 3 weeks: 74%, 81%, 67%. He's second in the league in passing yards. He's the dual threat because he gets it done on the ground as well. He's absolutely taken the reins of that offense and ran with it since the beginning of the season. And their defense is playing surprisingly well too. So right now they're playing like the best team in the East. They're the number 1 team in my opinion in the East. They're the top dog. So it's very, very interesting to see where they go from here. And they only lost to Houston, who's 3-0. So that's their one blemish on their resume, which you really can't blame them, because Houston, is probably the best team in the league right now. So I'm just excited to see, as the team continues to gel, where they go from here, and if they can unseat Houston and be one of those title favorites at the end of the year.
Yeah, they did it in all 3 phases on Sunday too, with the kickoff return for a touchdown. They played extremely well on defense. They probably gave up more yards than they would have liked to, but the offense was just firing on all the cylinders. Big plays in the running game, especially to start. And to your point, Ta'amu's really kind of held on the offense, or kind of taken hold of the offense. And one thing I really like, again, I love what Chuck Long's doing on offense. I feel like I'm watching a college offense out there. It is a great mix of runs and passes and RPOs, and really kind of utilizing Ta'amu's skills. And they got some pretty good running backs back there too, with Christine Michael and Matt Jones, for real.
Yeah, and can you imagine if St. Louis finishes number 1 in the East and hosts their their playoff game?
Gosh,
who's going to go in there and beat them? It's St. Louis.
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone in the East can do it if St. Louis is home. So they're sitting pretty. That's a team that's trending very well, and then a team that's kind of been on top since the beginning, the Houston Roughnecks. I don't really know what else we say about them at this point. I mean, no one's been able to stop that offense, and there's no signs of them slowing down, especially that connection between P.J. Walker and Cam Phillips. Just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably going to have Cam Phillips is going to win Star of the Week again, and they're going to have the first 3 XFL Star of the Weeks through the first 3 weeks of the season. I mean, they've been absolutely unbelievable. The offense is as advertised. P.J. Walker is as advertised. Cam Phillips, I mean, I could go on and on and on, and their defense is playing solid. Like, their defense, it might not be the best defense in the league, but again, I sound like a broken record. It doesn't have to be. It just needs to be serviceable, and it is right now, and it's playing better than serviceable. They're playing above average defense, which is a recipe for a playoff berth for them and a potential championship berth.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, guys, is they're the only team that's really hitting big plays consistently. Yep. So I think the only way that you can really beat this team is limit the big plays and limit PJ Walker, both on the air and with the legs, right? I mean, got to be able to limit the big plays to even compete with this team. And I thought the Vipers, for the most part, gave them a run for some of the game, but I mean, you could obviously tell who the better team was on the field. I'd like to see the defense play a tad bit better, kind of like we did in week 1, but to Kenny's point, they don't need to be the world's greatest defense if they're going to sit there and score 30-plus points and have all of those back-breaking big plays. They really crush a team. So,
yeah, so Houston comes in at number 1. That's our list going into week 4. What's your list? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Let us know in the comment section below. Follow us at XFL Chalk Talk. We have a bunch of great games going on this weekend, so stay with us throughout the action, week 4 of the XFL.
What's up, football fans? This is Coach Gless. Want to know how to listen to all of our segments on the go? You can subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform today. And don't forget to rate us and give us that 5-star review.